Today's lecture is on the topic of the Government of India Act. Government of India Act was implemented in 1935 as the Constitution of India. It was the third installment of the political reforms that was promised to implement in India after 1929. Despite the failure of the Round Table Conference, in March 1933, the British government announced its proposals for how India should be governed. So, government Today our lecture is on the topic of Government India Act 1935. Despite the failure of the Round Table Conference, the British government announced that new political and constitutional reforms would be implemented in India. These reforms were based on the discussions, suggestions, recommendations floated by the Indian leadership during the Round Table Conference. In 1933, a white paper was published by the British government. White paper means the bill that is published before the enactment of any law in the parliament. In 1934, it was produced before the Parliament of England, and in August 1935, it became the India Act 1935. This India Act was rejected by Muslim League and Congress, and the rejection was due to its clauses. When we talk about the Indian Act 1935, we first of all go through its important features. 1935 India Act is divided into two parts: the federal subject and the provincial subjects, and the third is related to the powers of the Governor General and the governors of the provinces. So let's start from its important features, the federal list. India was to be a federation. Both the provinces and the princely states were to be its part. So this federation consisted on the provinces and 630 princely states. This federation was to be given dominion status, self-rule, and it had a bicameral assembly at the federal level. Bicameral assembly had two houses. The upper house was to have 156 members from the British Indian provinces and 104 members from the princely states, and the upper house was known as State of Council. The lower house had 250 members from the provinces. They were to be elected from the provincial assemblies and by the provincial legislative assemblies, and 125 members from the princely states. So bicameral assembly with two houses, State of Council, and its membership was divided among the provinces and the princely states. The lower house, Federal Assembly, had 250 members from provincial assemblies and 125 members from the princely states. An important clause, diarchy, that was included in 1919 Indian Act at the federal at the provincial level. It was dropped at the provincial level, and now this was implemented at the federal level. In the federal level, under the diarchy proposals, under the doctrine of diarchy, the powers were divided into the federal list and into into the federalist, it was divided into transferred subjects and reserved subjects. The transferred subjects were handed over to the Indian elected members of the parliament, upper house and lower house, and reserved subjects were under the control of the British Viceroy and his executive council. So the federal list under reserved subjects contained defense, foreign affairs, religious affairs, and administration of the tribal areas directly under the control of the Governor General, and rest of the powers were transferred, which were known as the transferred subjects, were given to the Indian Parliament and its representatives. At provincial level, diarchy was replaced with a system in which provinces were given to large degree of autonomy. Means apparently written in the Indian Act that the powers are in the hands of the Indian elected legislative assemblies, but indeed they were in the control of the British governors of the provinces, because they could interfere on the name of religious affairs, protection of minorities. So they had the excuse to control it. So number of provinces was increased to 11 by giving the status of province to KPK, the fully fledged province, and creating 2 new provinces, Odisha and Sindh was separated from Bombay. The act appeared to grant real power to the people of India, but in reality there was no change in the execution of the power. The Governor General, the powers of the Governor General. Governor General was head of the federation and could exert special powers in the reserved subjects. Provincial governors also had special powers in the 2 reserved areas. They had the authority to dismiss ministers and even the right to dismiss the whole provincial assembly and administration, and rule by proclamation during a period of emergency. So the provincial governor were given the right of emergency to implement in the state on the name of the protection of minorities, on the name of the protection of the rights of the minorities. The part concerning central government was never introduced because the princes rejected the new arrangements. The princely states did not accept the arrangements of the allocation of seats and a representation in the upper house and the lower house of the Federal Assembly, so it was not introduced. Act appeared to give the Indian people a say in running their own country. There was only limited franchise, 25% of India had the vote. The Indian Act was rejected by Congress. Nehru said it's a machine with a strong brakes but had no engine. So was the case. Nehru also rejected it on behalf of Congress. Quaid-e-Azam also rejected it. He said it's entirely rotten, completely bad and totally unacceptable. So India Act was rejected by the government of by the people of India, and particularly the Muslim League and Congress, because they were not satisfied with this act. It had a very impressive sort of draft and language in the bill and in the act, but in actual power was indeed in the hand of the British Governor General and the governors of the provinces. This act was implemented in 1935, and in 1937 the government of India decided to hold elections in India, and these elections were to be held in the 11 provinces of India. Federal elections, election for Federal Assembly were not announced, only provincial elections held in India. Let's have a brief look on the elections. The elections for the 11 provincial assemblies were announced. In the beginning, Nehru was not and Congress was not in favor of participating in the electioneering process, but later they joined it. Muslim League, that had split into two groups in 1927, it reunified in 1930. In 1934, Mr. Jinnah was convinced to lead this, to lead the Muslim League, to make it more popular, and he was in the process of reorganizing the Muslim League when the elections were announced. So when we have a look on the process of performance of the Congress and the Muslim League in the elections, it deems necessary to talk about their manifesto. The manifesto of the Congress was self-rule and united India. So people were observing Congress and the role of Gandhi for non-cooperation movements and other activities which he carried out against the British government and tried to give them a tough time and resistance. Muslim League also followed in the footsteps of Congress and demanded the safeguard for the rights of the Muslims as well as for self-rule. So when the results of the election came out, the Congress had swept the elections and it won 1,772 seats in 8 provinces, and it formed its government in 11 provinces. In 8, it straightforwardly won the election and constituted its own governments, and 3 other provinces in Sindh, Assam and other Bengal, it formed coalition government. So when Congress came into power, they are known as the period of the Congress ministries from 1937 to 1939. During this Congress ministries period, actually the policies of the Congress were based on the philosophy of Gandhi. And the Muslim historians also allege Congress for starting its policy of suppressing the Muslims, which are known as the atrocities of the Congress. Because Congress adopted such activities, such policies, and they carried out activities which were against the interest of the Muslims. I briefly enumerate them. For example, the policy of Bande Mataram. Bande Mataram was a song in the novel of Anand Mit, and it was taken by Congress as the national anthem of India. The Muslims opposed it. Muslim League opposed it because it injured the feelings of the Muslims, and it was necessary to sing it in the morning assemblies in the schools. Then the educational policy of the Congress was based on the philosophy of Gandhi, and that was drafted by Zakir Hussain Sayyid, a Muslim congressman. So it had 2 parts. One is the Vidya Mandir scheme and the other was the Varda. So in the Vidya Mandir scheme, the temples were declared schools where the Muslims were reluctant to send their children, as well as the Varda scheme, the picture of the portrait of Gandhi and the philosophy of Gandhi, Ahimsa, was included in the as a part of the curriculum. So under this educational scheme, it was a secular sort of curriculum where the religious education was excluded, and the philosophy of Gandhi was instilled in the mind of the students, so Muslim opposed it. As far as concerned, another important issue, that was the riots broke out in Bengal and Bihar. Muslim League constituted 2 probing committees. One is known as Pirpur Committee, another is known as Sharif Committee. They presented their reports on Bihar and Bengal respectively. In these reports, Muslim League gave evidences that Congress was involved in instigation the mobs for riots, and the police was protecting the mob. So this was the time when the policies of the Congress were based on this philosophy. The time had come back after 900 years and the Hindu Raj could be established. This is the view of the Muslims. When we talk about the view of the Congress, their standpoint was that Congress actually had the majority. Muslims had cast vote for them, so there is no other real representative of the Indians, and the policies of All Indian National Congress were actually based on their manifesto. In the meanwhile, Nehru launched a Muslim mass contact campaign, and he delivered speeches to the rallies in different parts of India that Congress had united India. Congress had appeared in the election as the sole representative. Jinnah also started his mass contact campaign. He actually addressed the Muslims and made them convinced that Muslim League wanted to safeguard the rights of the Muslims, and the policies of the Congress are evident. They are against the basic human rights of the Muslims. This dabble was going on between the Congress and the Muslim League during this period of the Congress ministries, when in September 1939 the World War II broke out. And once again Gandhi decided to exert full pressure upon the British government. So Congress Executive Committee took a decision that in November they would resign from the ministries. So in November 1939, the Congress resigned from the ministries in the provincial governments, and the rule came to an end. This rule had impacts on the history of India. When we analyze the impacts, we must see it with two different views as an impartial historian and history student. Congress actually implemented their policies which were based on their manifesto, and they had the stance for which supported their manifesto. They said that manifesto was actually behind the policies of Vidya Mandir scheme, Varda scheme, and Hindi was made national language. Congress flag was hoisted on the offices in place of the Union Jack, the flag of the British government. But the Muslims had their own standpoint. They believed that the Congress actually wanted to avail this opportunity as to revive the Hinduism in India and Hindu culture and society based on the philosophy of Gandhi, Ahimsa, as well as the United India. So Muslims suffered during this time a lot, and this period is very important for Muslim League and the Muslim community of India. The communalism spread in India due to the policies of Congress. Muslim League, which was being reorganized by Quaid-e-Azam, became more organized and vibrant for the protection of the rights of the Muslims. Jinnah, who got disappointed after roundtable conferences, he decided to stay in England forever. He was convinced to come back India. He took League as a president of League, and he recognized it very nicely. And this was the time when he actually made his utmost efforts to instill the feelings in the minds of the Muslims that they are a separate nation and they had their own identity. Although we did not find any evidence that he talked about two-nation theory during this time of 1939. However, when 1940 the All Indian National All Indian Muslim League held its session in Lahore. Then he elaborated two-nation theory at length after the adoption of the Pakistan or Lahore resolution. We would discuss this in the next lecture 16, and I request for the subscription of this channel so that you may get the fresh videos. Thank you.